Good afternoon, everybody. This is exciting. Audrey gave us a little, or gave you a little background about Brittany and I. So I'm not going to belabor this point, but we both do work at the Davis Group. I've been 18 years in the field. I was at two other dealerships, and now we are a manufacturer's rep. Our main line is OFS in Carolina. So, with no further ado, like she said, we are both using CET for 3 years. So, I kind of wanted to give you an overview. I guess we should share our t-shirts first. We took this very literally,
Can see them.
and we have our What Would Dolly Do t-shirts on to keep us going today, along with our cup of ambition, which I'm over coffee now, so is now actually water, but that's okay. So, pretty much what we're going to go through is how to effectively and efficiently work a small, I'd even say a small to medium project, day to day project from start to finish. We want to give you some tips and tricks and different ways that we maneuver this each day. And our ultimate goal, like we say here, is to send off a masterpiece to the end user.
So the sample project that we're going to be showing you guys, first we're going to show you how to import a DWG and a PDF. That's going to be one of the first things we'll get from a dealer end user to help place our furniture into your drawing space. We're going to show you how to import typicals. We're going to use the OFS typicals just to get some quick furniture in and show you the really cool part of that extension. We're going to show you how to make an environment in your drawing. That means putting in walls, putting in doors, changing carpet, adding in monitor arms, things that make your drawing really pop, make it look like you've spent hours on it.
Yes.
When in reality, it only took you about 5 minutes. Part tagging. We're going to show you part tagging so you can set up your bill of materials and your calculations up properly and group all of your typicals in your areas together. The actual calculation setup, there's certain columns and sorting that we've used that we found that work really well. The pay-per-view templates, so you can see your 2D and your 3D and be able to send those images off to your client. And then finally, printing the report and printing the template and printing it all into a PDF to share.
Exactly. So we're going to pretty much go through a full project from drawing, rendering, flat plan, and to your quote calculations is what we call it here. It's your quote, your BOM, however you want to call it. Okay, so let's start by pulling in a PDF. I will say that Brittany and I used to really not like working in a PDF, but we've gotten to the point where it is super easy and a great tool if your client says, I'm sorry, that's all I have.
It also doesn't bog down your computer as much as a DWG can.
Exactly.
But one of the first ways you can bring in a PDF is using your tools extension. And there's an image and text box where you put that box right in the middle of your drawing, double click to find the PDF you want to pull in. And CET considers the PDFs as images. So you could have pages of your PDF, but then here we happen to have one page that we're going to pull in and insert. And then once it's inserted, you have to measure and scale it to make sure it's actually going to be like the right scale that you want to work with. That little box is also to the left in the tools extension under image and text. And we tend to work with a door. We usually know that a door is 36 inches wide commercially if you don't happen to have a dimension already drawn on your floor plan. So you can click and drag the section that you want to measure out and then type in 36. That's what you want it to be. And then it readjusted itself in the background there. And then once you zoom out, I like to use the dimension or measure tools at the top to make sure that it actually did what you wanted it to do. And you can also bring in the same exact thing by using keyboard shortcuts. I have an I set for image, so I just hit the I on the keyboard, pull it in, and then you're pulling in the same exact image. You're rotating it and adjusting it the same way. And by the way, we have all of this stuff recorded for you guys. We're just talking over. We figured that would help with feedback and the video hopefully not lagging. So once you pull in that PDF, you can also use the green box like we're showing instead of going all the way to the left in the extension. And you can click measure and scale and then type in the size that you need it to be. And then I also, for example, for another keyboard shortcut, use D for dimension and M for measure. And we'll talk about that later too, but it's just a file keyboard shortcut and you can set a ton of them. And as always, lock your PDF so that you're not selecting it and moving it around when you're trying to select your furniture.
Or better yet, deleting it.
Yeah.
And also you're going to hear us talk about key bindings. That's exactly the same thing as a keyboard shortcut. And we're going to go over a few of those, like Brittany said, but just so you know, you can also go into your tools and your keyboard shortcuts and you can change them too. All right, let's go on. So we know that most of the time you probably get an AutoCAD drawing. So if you have AutoCAD already on your computer, we have a few little just tips and tricks for you for that. But you want to make your file as small as possible just because it's hard to work in very heavy, weighted down files. So we suggest first going in and remove everything that you don't need. If you're doing one little section of a big AutoCAD drawing, just go ahead and isolate that one part and get rid of the rest. You can also type in purge, that's a command, overkill, another command, and those will take away layers and different things that you won't even notice. And just a plug here, like we said on day 3, Michael Beal's giving a much more in-depth presentation on this. So if you need more AutoCAD tips and especially breaking down the files, definitely join his session. Okay, well, let's start by pulling in a DWG file that your client sent you, and then we're going to clean it up so we can actually work in it.
Okay, so to pull in an AutoCAD, you can go to your tools extension again and find the CAD tools section, and then pull up CAD settings and import a new file. Ours happens to be saved right here. And when you pull it in, you want to double check your size. We found less than 1 megabyte works best, helps not make the drawing run too slow. And then usually the units are set based on the AutoCAD you had saved, which we have inches. And then right here, I'm showing that depending on how you had the settings set the last time you pulled in a DWG, you can show the DWG in 3D view, or you can choose not to. I'll tend to leave it in at first, and then when I actually start placing furniture and changing the floor, I don't want it seen in my rendering or floor plan. But you can also turn things off by using the CAD layers in that same CAD settings dialog box, where because it's a DWG and not a PDF, those layers are actually talking with CET. So you can turn off a specific layer versus the whole AutoCAD visual. I'll also go in myself and I select all and change it all black because I can't see like those yellows and those blues that show up on the white paper view. And then we always make sure to lock that in the drawing, just like we would lock the PDF, so we don't delete it or move it around. We're trying to move furniture around. There's also another way to pull in a DWG, and that's just by dragging it from your file. You don't have to do the open AutoCAD settings, and you can see that when you drag it, you get the same box, same CAD layer, same everything to check. It's just avoiding kind of a step of having to import a new one and then just dragging it in does it just as quickly.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so next step then, we've got our AutoCAD drawing in there. We've converted, it's a CET drawing now for us, and we're going to put up our walls. And we're telling you, don't put up your emotional walls. We're just going to put up hard walls. And just like everything else we've been presenting, there are a couple ways to do this.
So one way is to be in your tools extension again in the CAD tools. And you can use the generate thin walls on a DWG entity or layer. And right here, we're just putting it on an entity. You can choose a layer and it'll put it on, for example, if you chose the 0 point wall layer, it could go over everything that's a 0 point wall. So here we just chose to do entity, so it shows up everywhere you click, and that also means on layers that might have all these tiny little lines in AutoCAD that make up something like a door. That's one reason why I don't tend to use this feature by
Exactly.
placing it just on an entity or layer.
Mhm.
I like to do the other way.
Okay, and this is our second way, and this is the way too, just an FYI, if you're working in a PDF, this would be your only way to be able to put up walls, so.
So you can, did you start it? Okay.
I'm sorry.
We're working side by side, by the way. So you can pull in walls using the walls
Actually,
extension.
we need to go next. We're on here. So
Happens
sorry
every
for the
time.
repeat. All right, here we go. This is the way you would do it, and this is the way you would do it in a PDF as well.
So you can go to your walls extension, and then at the top, we like to make sure to check that you're not checking, or you are checking that you're not going to be moving walls
Right.
around unless you're in the walls extension. Sorry about that. We like to then use the AutoCAD or the PDF, so you can drop walls directly over top of the lines that you're seeing, which makes it much easier.
Right.
If you don't have that floor plan to work off of, and you're just doing like, I'm typing in 120 for a wall and then typing another 120, you have to make sure you take into account the thickness of the walls. So once you draw those walls in, that 120 wall, 120 wall, 120 wall, it's not going to make the right interior dimensions unless you take into account the thickness of the wall.
Yeah, so always measure is a good thing.
Yes. D and M for measure, or dimension and measure.
Yeah.
So in dropping all these walls in, you can also see on the left side that when you use the walls extension, you can put in doorways. The doorways can be open or closed. You can copy them. You can type in the size with the green box up top. There's also windows where you can add blinds, curtains. You can also put in baseboards on the walls. You can put in your ceilings in this section, different columns. And
delay.
We also like to, when we put in doors, sometimes adjust the opening to make it like maybe half open. Maybe you've got a desk that's really close to that doorway opening and you really want to show them, hey, this is really tight. Maybe you can look at a different type of configuration. But then also when you do a rendering and you just kind of have like things just set a little off kilter instead of perfectly straight, it adds more dimension and just makes the space feel a little more lively than having just straight lines and straight pieces. Lively.
Yeah, or lived in. We live in our offices, don't we?
Yeah, we are now.
All right. Oh, sorry about that. I think I just went way too far. There we go. Okay, so we've got our floor plans in now. We've got our walls up, and just a few quick tips we like to use is one, we always paint our walls white. Now, if you're doing a realistic rendering and someone is sent, I've had people say like, this is the wallpaper on one wall, then I'll do that. But if we're doing a quick day-to-day project, just painting your walls white really makes your furniture stand out more. And the same is with the white stone floor. When you go to your materials explorer, the number 126 stone floor is what we normally use. When we first started CET, everybody used a white plastic floor, but it's pretty reflective. So this is a little, for lack of a better word, flatter and just lets the furniture do the shine instead of the floor. It definitely is easier to work in your drawing when you don't have too many walls up. So sometimes it helps put some up, and also when you're working on your rendering, sometimes the walls are in the way. So it's easier to work before you put too many up there. And like we said, learn your keyboard shortcuts or your key binding as we call them. And like we said, you can redo them. You can make them work for you. I know one that took so long for Brittany and I to get used to was A. A is copy. I don't know why. And I thought we have to change that. But now we go into every program we have and are hitting A, wondering why it's not copying anything. So learn those. That's really helpful. Another quick trick is to download TechSmith Capture. It used to be Jing. I don't know, probably some of you have it, but captures their updated one now, and it works much better. And this is a great way just to screen capture something, or even take a quick movie on that one too. And then just other reminders is Configura chat support is great. We're on it. It's embarrassing to say, way more than I think we should be, but things happen. The only thing I will tell you is always run your clean start first, because that can be a miracle worker a lot of the time. And then, like we said, we're eTools, we're OFS, and eTools at OFS can help you with any OFS specific issues. And both of these are great to take suggestions or problems that you have as well. So just a few things to keep in mind. All right. So we all know the client. A client doesn't ask for one thing. They usually want options. So today for our project, we're going to say that the client is asked to see 3 different options. So we're just going to use basic benching, height adjustable benching, and then semi-enclosed workstations, which for 2020 and where we're at now is probably the answer. So let's go ahead and start placing furniture, and then we're going to show you how to kind of, for lack of a better word, like decorate your environment.
So within our OFS extension, like we mentioned, there are typicals embedded in, and it's a quick way for us to drop in typicals and show you that once you can pull in that whole mass typical, you've got it all selected. One way to kind of manipulate your typicals and move them around is by using the align tool at the top, which helps you kind of select a whole side of that benching and then snap it to like a whole side of the wall. And then if we can pull in here height adjustable benching, you can rotate your typical to the position you want it to be in. And then there's a position tool at the top where you can click a corner point and then snap that corner point to the wall or wherever you need to snap it to. And then we also have typicals that are embedded, or not embedded, they're on OFS's website.
That's our website, yeah.
So tons of typicals here saved. And what OFS does is they actually save them as favorites. Favorites are just a type of file that lives within CET that actually saves symbols. So it's not a DWG, it's not a PDF, it's not a separate something you're importing. You can literally just drag and drop a .cm fave file, a favorite file, and then you can manipulate those symbols just like any other CET symbol.
But you cannot go on the website and just think that that's your drawing. Have a drawing open and drag it or drop it into your drawing. Because like we said, these are a little different. These are favorites.
So then you can also use the rectangle select tool at the top, and you can select the whole typical again, move things over as you need to. And the beauty of having those typicals for us now even too is you can find something that's really similar to what you want to be using, and then maybe you're just getting a budget price for your client, and then you can manipulate it to how you need it to be for your situation. So thankfully here in our pretty little environment, we already had finishes and stuff applied to these typicals. So once you get that furniture in there, we like to use the 3D tool and then start to paint some of the environment. So you can paint baseboards and make those look a little more than just flat white walls, flat white baseboard. I don't know about you guys, but I've been into like the doctor's office recently, and I look at baseboards and door heights, and I'm making sure that I'm drawing things properly that look realistic. You can also go in, you can change your carpet. And then one of the other big things that we really like to put in is going to this office accessories extension. All of these design extension, these little free extensions that you see on the side there, you can get them from the marketplace in your My Configura. And they're totally free, and they add just a little bit of dimension and realistic aspect to your drawings. And again, like we said, you know, this is taking just a couple of minutes just to drop all these items in to just add some more layers and some more interest to a rendering. And as always, you don't have to put all these things in, but we found it really does help that client visualize where their furniture is going to go in. And like they were saying earlier in the keynote, it's a differentiator.
Definitely.
In the office accessories here too, other than monitors, you see things like headphones and staplers.
And your iPhone. Yeah.
There's books, things that you can kind of like haphazardly, I'd say, place, things that, you know, they're not all in perfect position. They're kind of offset, just like the doors when things are kind of, you know, not in straight lines. It makes things look more realistic. We also like to put in picture frames, and we like to change the displays. Sometimes you can put in a logo even for like the company you're working for. In our green box for some of these items like laptops, you can pull down in the green box here, how they have set displays from CET. And then as well as putting in, like, say, a logo for a company you're working on, you can put a picture of me on your desk. And who wouldn't want to do that and send it off to your client?
There you go. We like to personalize our drawings. Yes.
And then the last thing that I was doing right here was just kind of putting in
Yes.
like an accent wall, some having a foreground and background concept.
Yeah.
And then that's one way to kind of get your
Yeah.
environment set up.
And just like we were saying, what she was doing when she was on the computer or the picture frame, just double click and then you can go to anything saved, and that's how you can really personalize it. Okay, so we just thought we'd give you another screen here of just about adjusting your environments and the things I think that you really want to have downloaded into your CET. Different extensions here. Obviously, the walls we've used, the 3D, the characters, the lights, the plants and the flowers, and the office accessories. And like we said, if you go to your My Configura account into the marketplace, these are all free. And they've been redoing them, the characters, and especially the plants and flowers. And if you haven't gone into that lately, and everybody wants biophilia and things now, these are phenomenal and take about 2 seconds to drop into your drawing and look gorgeous. So make sure you download these extensions here. Okay, so we've kind of set our environment now. So the next thing we want to do is go in and get a good rendering. Everybody wants renderings now, realistic renderings, to show them what it's really going to look like. I'm not going to read through all of this. At the end, we give you our email. I know these are going to be available, I think, the slides. But these are the settings that I would say work for us 99% of the time when we're doing a project like this. When you get into levels and ceilings and different things, it takes some more adjustment. But for day to day, these are the best settings that will give you a gorgeous rendering so quickly. So just make sure you have all of this set on your computer. Okay, so the next thing, we're just going to touch on lighting. Lighting is a very complex issue, but we want to just let you know the kind of the simple lighting we use day to day, and also how to get a section of your drawing into the rendering called the snip tool here.
So in your lights extension, there's one light called the Omni light. That's one that I like to use a lot, especially in an open air typical, and it's just that little orb that showed up. But for something like this, it's a small enough space where if you use this rectangle area light, it can make your rendering run slower, but our file and our rendering is small enough that it won't knock it down too fast in order to get a nice even lighting. As you saw when you pull it in, half the time it doesn't come in at the right height. You can adjust that. Same as your light settings. It took me many times in between recording this and now to get that light set right, but we find that that 300 is a little too bright for that big area light, and you kind of kick it down. I set it at 175. And then there was that snip to photo lab tool at the top that puts that green box that I just selected around a certain area. And then you can still see it on the ground here in your 3D portion of the photo lab. And then it takes into account the only area that you want to render. And then on the left here, I'm kind of pointing out some of the camera perspectives where you can adjust zooming in and out with perspective, move your elevation up and down, just kind of get yourself in that right position. You can use the mouse as well, and you can even type into those areas versus dragging the bar. and then make sure you always set to product lighting. Again, this is 99% of the time the best renderings that we have for
Yeah.
kind of more simplistic areas. Again, there's not ceilings, there's not added walls, there's not tons of layers to it.
Yeah.
And then you go ahead and you hit render once you have that all set up.
And we made a little assumption here that the client wanted the paneled workstation. So we're just saying that we gave them their choices. They chose this. So instead of starting a new drawing or doing that, we just use this box tool to get our rendering, and we don't have to do anything in the drawing just in case they would come back and change their mind, like I'm sure we all know happens. Okay, so there's our rendering. Pretty simple, looks really good. I think gives good perspective. That's why we kind of added some things down in the back there, but a fairly successful rendering here. And next, then, we just want to talk a little about post-processing. You'll notice, well, I think it was the screen before. When you have your green box, that means your rendering is finished and you're ready to save it. Once you're done your rendering, you can go to on the right-hand side, this post-processing. And this lets you tweak and do all sorts of things to a finished picture, basically. So and there's our green box. Sorry, I was ahead and not behind. So let's look at that for a second.
So once you have your green box, the post-processing stuff on the right there can start applying to that final rendered image. We tend to work with the exposure, brightness, and contrast most often, and you can kind of see what they each do to your environment. Obviously, overexposure we know of, and if you kick that up too high, everything gets too bright. Same with using brightness. You can make the space too bright, but you can adjust brightness without overexposing. I tend to like to knock the contrast down just a little bit and the brightness and the exposure up just a few. And it kind of gets an even level of making those woods finishes shine, but then brightening the overall space. And then right down below that, the only other thing that we'll check mark is this watermark. And when you check mark it, there is a CET designer logo that's in the middle that comes in kind of embedded in your CET. And you can see how you can make it darker. You can move it around the space. And if you don't want to use the CET logo, you can pull
there,
in.
we're done. That's it.
You can pull in your own logo.
Yeah.
And we like to just put this as, like it says, a watermark, just kind of in the bottom corner there. We'll adjust the transparency down. You can browse to pull in whatever logo you want or whatever watermark image you would want to pull in. But what I actually do is in the top right corner in that little arrow, you can add a custom preset, which means you're saving that preset into PhotoLab, and then it'll open in other drawings. So here I'm adding one and I'm saving it. And then what I'll do next is I'm going to pick one that I've already had saved previously. And so you can see that up top, the color area, the post-processing adjusted. And those happen to be just little tweaks of adjustment that I find works for most every time. Again, this is not going to be every time, but these are things that we find we know where to drag and drop to know that we're going to get a good rendering.
90% of the time.
Yeah, 90% of the time.
And what she's saying about setting those, it's almost like setting a template. So every time you go in, it's already ready for you. And that's the great thing, I think, about CET. In each of these stages, we can set that template. So we're not doing this every single time either. Okay, so we just learned that this is called an open air rendering. We were like, we don't really know what that's called.
Floating in white space.
Yeah, exactly. We just, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll show what we've done in an environment like we've talked about in their actual office space, but people will come back to us sometimes and say, yeah, but I can't really hone in on exactly what I'm getting. I want to see that furniture up close. So what we do is we're calling that an open air rendering, just so they can really zoom and see what they're buying.
So in order to do that, one way is we can go to our carpets and coverings extension. And there's a carpet at the top where you can just pull in a rectangle and then draw it over the space you want to apply the carpet. And then sometimes it'll snap to the top of your walls.
Yeah.
Where you just have to readjust it.
Everybody wants a carpeted ceiling.
Yeah. And then it's going to hold the last material you use. So it happened to pick the carpet that I already wanted. And then you can go in and find that stone floor we mentioned and then apply it to the rest of the drawing. So you've still got your environment, you still got that space within the in your walls, and then sometimes even you've got wood flooring out in the open area, and then the offices are carpeted. So that's another way to use your carpets and coverings. And those lock into place when you leave the extension as well. And then you can use your select tool again, your rectangle select tool, and then hit A for copy, and then copy your typical out into the open space. Now, when you go back into Photo Lab, and if you make a copy of a previous drawing or a previous rendering, it saves that green box if you had one.
Yeah.
So when you're in Photo Lab, you've got the toggle between 2D and 3D. You would have to go to 2D and delete that box just like we did, and create a new green box around the item that you just want to render. So you can see that the rest of the product disappeared in the background there.
Right.
And then you can use those same settings again on the side to change your perspective, change your elevation, make sure you're on product lighting. Product lighting is using the floor and the product to bounce light off of.
Exactly.
And again, we've found that is the best rendering for a quick rendering that we like.
Yeah. And it's fun just to go through there and kind of toggle around and just get the view and the perspective that you want or you think the client is looking for. You can even hone in on a certain piece of product or something. So here's what we're calling well, first of all, we're calling it 6S. But second of all, this is the open air typical, and this really hones in on the furniture, lets them see more into the slide out storage and things like that. And we feel like this is a good way to, if you're quoting typicals for somebody or something like that too, this really lets them know what they're getting. Okay, so now we have our drawing, we have our rendering ready. So what we need to get together now is, of course, every client wants to know, what does it cost? So we think that the first part of preparing a quote or a BOM or a cost is part tagging, especially when you're dealing with options.
So if you were to go into your calculations, you can see before part tagging, that's just a jumble of parts. You have no idea what goes to which typical. So if you go to your tools part tagging, we tend to work in tag 1. We keep that tag 1 label. It works with calculations. It works if you need to export. And then we make tags within tag 1 to then label your typicals. You can use the tagging rectangle and you label it benching for the first one. The second one, we had height adjustable benching. You can also individually select, say, for example, all of the chairs are going to be labeled CH1, and then the typicals of the furniture, the case goods themselves, are going to be separate pricing. You can do that, and you can label the items individually, or you can select the whole typical itself.
And you can call these, name them whatever you want. You can add to them later, things like that, make changes.
There's also the little boxes next to each label. And we're designers. We like to make things colorful and color code it. So you can change each tag's color. So you can even more so differentiate when you're clicking on that tag. You can see which items are tagged with the, once you click on the tag, the items light up a little bit there. Once you go back to your calculations and you hit refresh, because we've just added that, you can see where the tags are showing up now. And then for another keyboard shortcut, I'm not sure if this one was set before, if I set it myself, but I set it to be Shift P. So every time I hit that, my part tagging opens up quickly, and it's just an easier, quicker way for me to access that.
And you see, you get your totals in there too. So a client could literally look at this and be like, that's going to cost me that, and that. Okay, so here is pretty much, that was part tagging. Now we're going to go into how to actually, or not, how to get our calculations together, or our quote together, we'll say.
So that calculation setup was in the top right corner of your CET, and that's always running while you're placing furniture. And what we like to do is make a copy of the main article view first, because then you can manipulate the article view, like naming it to whatever you want. And the name is actually where we title when we print our PDF, what our title of our file is going to be. So we actually go into filter and we filter out things that don't have a tag. Like we did, we copied that typical, put it into floating space, but we already had the other ones in there. So we don't need it. We just need to work with the things we've part tagged. And then we have different columns and grouping and sorting that you can go by. And you can group and sort by whatever. You can group and sort by 5 different things, and then it starts to narrow it down. And you can move those columns into different locations. And here too, I'm showing you, you can save that calculation setup to save as a default. So it opens every time you open CET. You can save it in your calculation settings. So you can open it up and say someone else sent you a quote. And then you can load it at a future time as well. But saving default too is big. So you don't even have to worry about loading it in. And then here I was just showing you that usually when you open it up, you've got all of your information in that calculations, but then you can expand it fully and then you can see all of those parts and pieces.
And the finishes, that type of thing.
And the finishes,
so,
yes. Another way to see calculations is by using that lasso calculation. And then this is showing you an example of when it didn't work. So,
and we're used to that sometimes too, as good as the program is.
So sometimes you just have to click and point again, and I zoomed in a little closer. And when you're using that lasso calculation, you click and you hold, and then it's highlighting everything that you're calculating in that blue. And it's only got these items in that one tag. And then you can go in and you can label that. And for example, here we're just going to work with the paneled workstations now. And then when you look at the filter and the tags, only paneled workstation shows up because that's all you selected. So I've got the same columns and everything, and then we've got just our total at the bottom. And then say you just want to print pricing. You can go to the file print reports, and then we check only article view out of all those things on there. We check only article view if you just want pricing. And then at the top here, we've got where we load in our logo, which is actually a screenshot of our logo and a type up of disclaimers. We found that was the best way to get that onto our drawing since there's not a area to just freehand type a lot of things. And that show article view name and header is the only item we check in that section because that's where we're putting that title of the article view. Then you have all those article views we had open, and I'm selecting the only one that we want to print. And then I'm just choosing to print a report of that one article view. And then when I create my PDF, I'm only going to have that when it prints up here in just a second.
Just go and save it. And then we have our finished product there of just the paneled workstations, the one they chose.
And then that's where that logo shows up. And you could, there was a section there where you can make the logo bigger or smaller, but we know that it's going to show up there every time at the top of our pricing.
Yes, and actually we're getting ready to change it, which we do a lot. So we literally just type up a new one, screenshot it, and put it in. Okay, so these are the calculation settings. Once again, this is more of just an info page, but the ones that we have found work for us. So we keep these things checked all the time. Like Brittany was saying, we work 99% of the time just in tag 1, and we do some very large projects, and even having everything just sorted in tag 1 works just great. So this is just another thing, like check and see that these are the things you have checked in your calculation view, and then literally you can just save that as a template and it'll pop up every time. Okay, so let's just show you now. We've gone through our rendering. We have our drawing all set. We've got our rendering to send to the client. We now have our pricing to send to the client. But we feel like the third piece of the puzzle is creating a template. We used to call it plan view, paper view, whatever it is, the flat plan. And of course, you know that we usually need that because we need dimensions on things. So that we're going to go through how to do this in CET, making the flat plan now.
So there's the switch to pay-per-view button on the top right that you can click, and then you get to a pay-per-view. At the bottom, we went to open, and then we found these CET document templates where we have templates saved that just pop up with logos, with title areas, and a 2D box that we can just start working from immediately. The bottom pieces down there, they're just another image. You can use that I for image in the keyboard shortcuts. And then there's also an image box that's in your extension on the left where you can pull in that image. And this is just an example. And we just resized it and locked it into place. So we didn't move it around. Very easy. So you can put your logo, you can put disclaimers at the bottom of this, whatever information that you want to keep. There's also in the pay-per-view area, there's a lines area where you can pull in rectangles. And we just created a grid that would allow us to put in project name, tag our name and information. And then we lock all of that information into place as well. So just like that, just all generated, just like it did when we opened the template. It's what we do every single time. It makes our projects very quick and easy. And then I'm going to delete these and back those out. So we give you the project name, the tag, the header information, and then we also have a separate box so you can change that information and just type in whatever you want every time. Then you have to save at that bottom left. You have to save in the bottom left there where I clicked. Otherwise, you're not saving a template into your CET documents. You're just saving your CET drawing. So we also had that 2D box ready to go there that came from the left side as well, where the box is going to be the size of what you have it drawn to on your pay-per-view. And we happen to free scale it every time. We don't need to use a scale, but you can do that. You can see we have it set at custom. And then you can also see that when you start to type in a different size, that box changes. So you can make it bigger or smaller or cover a different area, but this is the only typical
And
we
we're
need.
just double clicking in the box there. That's
Yes, you only have to double click in the box and it drops you right into this pay-per-view.
Yes.
And you can see when I made the box bigger, it made it bigger in your 2D view and your selection view as well. So I'm just going to back up here and get back to that 2D view. So you can pull in an image again, and then this is where you can pull in your saved renderings. We found this too, once you save your rendering as a JPEG and pull it in this way, it's very clean. I don't have any issues with things like going away to stop being rendered. This is me forcing the program to do what I want. And you can put in multiple images. Sometimes I have a small 2D and then I have 3 different images. But here we just happen to have our environment version and then the open air. And then you drop those in, line them up, make it look pretty. And then that's where you can change below the project name. For example, this could be our CET Experience 2020 and the tag would be paneled workstations. So we've got like the same tag and the same description on everything that we're working through pricing and the part tagging and on here, so that it really relays to the dealer and the end user what they're getting. We also put in a Davis Group design hours, and then there's other things like a variable data field that you can pull on the left as well. And we do that for date because that's just too hard to remember to change every time. So we like to make sure it changes for us, and it does it once you print the pay-per-view.
Yeah, there it is.
So we don't need the plain pay-per-view that's on the bottom left there. We can get rid of that. And then say we want to copy this, and we could even copy it to do the other 2 areas. Right now, we're just going to do this one. And when you go to print reports, just like we were doing for article views, this is where we can go and we can print the article view and the pay-per-view together. So we've got that section where we only check show article name and header, just like before. We've got only our paneled workstations article view selected. And then in pay-per-view, you can see that we've got both the 1 and the 2 paper, but we only need to print the 1. So you can choose which papers to print. And because we have the pay-per-view and the article view selected, it's going to print together on one PDF.
Which is nice. Then you just have to make one send off there and they've got everything they need. So,
and I happen to label things like pricing and layout so I know what it is. Sometimes it's just a layout and I'll label it just a layout so I can, differentiate between all of my files. And then that's where you have your final that has your PDF of your 2D, your 3D, and your bill of materials there in one PDF document.
Okay. All right. We just did that, didn't we? All right. Went the wrong way. Sorry once again. So anyway, here's kind of our final product. Our final project now has the views we want, it has the flat plan. So if they're trying to figure out, will this typical fit or not? And we have now sent them the pricing for the chosen paneled workstations typical that they like. And that is pretty much what we have for you. That's kind of our quick take on what we do with 90% of our projects day to day.
And don't forget to ask, what would Dolly do if you're in trouble?
There you go. Yes, we have the t-shirt. So thanks.
Awesome. Great presentation. You basically just covered everything we do in our training. So everybody can skip training. Don't need to come to us for anything. You just learned everything you need to know. Just kidding. Come take
Yeah,
training.
exactly.
But that was really fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So we had a couple of questions. One that was in the chat with the photograph, the presets that you saved. You showed how you can save the preset in the post processing, and they were asking about the photograph setup. So you can do that as well. But I was wondering if you have CT up, can you just show really quick that little spot that you can save
give
your
us
presets?
a second, making sure we're screen sharing still.
Yep. Yeah, we just switched to. Yep. Perfect.
Yep, it's still sharing.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
This
So
is
I'll
great.
just
I can see you on both screens, Brittany.
Here. Here we are. We're very close and comfy here.
So it's right up here. So in photo, I haven't done this one in a while.
Oh, it's when you're in the advanced.
Go to post processing.
No, it's on the photograph
It's
setup
this
side,
version.
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead. Go down.
Yep,
Yeah, here
exactly.
I can do. Okay, there we
There
go.
we go. So just like there was that arrow over here, there's an arrow on the left.
Yep.
And then that's where you can add another custom preset. These are ones that are already saved. So let's see, for example, if I go to click Photo Lab Workshop, it just kind of adjusted itself, and then it changed the image dimension I saw. And I know it would have changed some things down here.
Yeah, the lighting.
I know it's a lot to see on the page there, but that's where you can add a custom preset for the photograph setup as well.
Beautiful. We had another question too in the Q&A, and for everybody too, if you have questions, now would be a great time to chat those in the question and answer section. But the question was, this came up when you were talking about bringing in those typicals right from OFS.
Oh, sure.
And the question is, will all components come in separately to change finishes or changes to widths and lengths?
It is. You can see, I can click on them right now. These are typicals. You can change the colors. You can do anything. Your text box will come right up. Do whatever you want. They are completely manipulable.
Go ahead and click on one of those and just stretch it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can change the size. I can.
Because they're CET symbols, even though the favorite can save multiple symbols as one, then once they all come in, they're all individual symbols.
And we live and die by favorites. I have long lists of them because you literally just right click and you can insert favorites. Here's a bunch I have just that I use all the time.
We save planters a lot because there's certain ones that fit in certain pieces. Yep.
Yeah. So yes, but you can change everything in that.
Awesome. Another question from Kayla. Can you share your settings again for advanced mode that you use frequently?
Let me go back to, okay, I'm just going to go back.
A few more.
Yep.
One more, two more.
Yeah.
Oh, back there. Sorry.
Wait, which one? This one, the post-processing or the? Okay.
Yeah, I think
that one, right?
Photo Lab. Sorry. Is this the right one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I can make it bigger too.
Screen
yeah.
And again, 99% of the time we did fine when we would sit in classes. Like we would just ask, like, what should we select? Well, it depends.
Yep, that's always the answer. People don't always like that answer.
You got to play with it, but that's a good jumping off point, I think.
And one thing too is always keep this emissive background checked. I know I've had a black screen and gone into chat support and they're like, you didn't check this. We've done some very embarrassing chats. Okay, fine, thanks. So yeah, so very important there.
Perfect. Let's see. Do you both often add ceilings to all of your renderings?
Rarely.
Yeah.
We happen to adjust our elevation to where you can't see it. It bogs down your drawing, and you have to add more lighting. Just because of the way we work, we don't need to see a ceiling unless it's something it's got some funky lighting, or it's part of the space to show like how tall it is to a ceiling or something like that. We don't need it because we're showing just the furniture on our day-to-day.
Yeah, the only time I've used ceilings a lot is twofold. If it's a 2-story building sometimes, but we also have a YouTube channel and we do videos on that. And with the videos, you pretty much need a ceiling. So, but Brittany's exactly right. Then it takes a lot of picking and choosing about lighting.
What's your YouTube channel? What's that all about?
We can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll find it if we have another question.
Yeah.
Perfect. You've got some fans, so people want to put your photos in their renderings. I'm sure they also want to check out your YouTube channel.
It's not that impressive. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up, but it's a work in progress. How's that?
Ruth is the one who does all the videos. She's just bragging for herself.
Yeah, don't be modest.
But it's something I enjoy for fun, which makes me a total dork. Yes.
I love it. Anonymous attendee, is this presentation available for download? I can answer that. Yes. I believe most of the sessions are recorded. Not sure if all of them are, but at least most, and you'll be able to find them on the CET Experience webpage after the conference is over, as well as the PowerPoint presentations too. So you will be able to review that.
And I just put the YouTube link in the chat box.
Yay.
Oh, gosh. Don't throw eggs.
Ashley P, can you review filtering a part tag again?
Oh, yeah, sure. I know we went over that really quick, and I will say part tagging is one of those things that can get a little temperamental sometimes. I am going the wrong way, of course.
Do you want to just do it yourself?
I can. Yeah. Why don't I? That's a good idea. We have the program up. We're going straight into tools. So it's tools, then part tagging. And this will come up automatically. Reconfiguration, tag 1, tag 2, tag 3. We just literally keep opening this up and adding and adding. Like I can add a section. I'll hit new tag, and let me say, I'll call this one a conference table, for lack of a better word, conference table. So there, and it's going to say it's not used because I haven't done anything with that. But I can go to my rectangle, and maybe I just want the 1. And I'm going to just really do that. And if I go right over here now, if I can get there, and go in here into the next.
Go back to that one.
It's all right. I can just go in here. But anyway, now you're going to see the conference tables. It's not going to be tagged because I need to go back and redo it. But here, let me show you. I can do it for good now.
And if you go to the settings too, I think they were asking about filtering by that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So sure.
And the calculations.
Yeah. Let me go to this. And let's say we've now got all of that. Here, will you want to do it? So now we've added our conference table. So now we have 4 sections we can do.
And so if you're, let's see, I'm going to go back to this one where we had filtered out So you don't see the stuff at the top that's not tagged. So that's where you were in settings and you go to filter and there's all these ways you can filter by. And we go to tag 1. And then that's where you see, okay, we'll add it back in. There's all the things that aren't tagged.
Or we can take the conference tables off. So did that help?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Was it Kayla, I think, asked the question? I don't remember now, actually.
Thank you, Rachel. Ashley, I just saw your comment about putting our faces in your renderings. I appreciate that.
Oh, I haven't looked at any of the comments.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Really quick reminder before you hop off. If you need CEUs, there is the drawing that you can download, and you just put the little initials that are in the pay-per-view on top of the session that you attend. So my initials you would use for this one, and my initials are the really big obnoxious one. I didn't realize everyone was doing theirs so small. So the really big initials, those are me. So you can put that next to this session. And that is that. But we're going to end here. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Enjoy the rest of your sessions and the rest of the conference. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.